All right. This is episode 75 of Ordinary Madness. I'm Steve Barker, and with me today is poet, writer, musician, host, comedian, all-around arts organizer, Jeanine Walker. And she's going to start us out with a poem. So take it away whenever you are ready.
Thanks, Steve. This poem is called Recovery and Surrender. Now, you know what? I'm going to read this other one. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Can I just change mid-course? All right. It's called Howler Monkey. I can't bear to look at you because you are so exact. A dark puzzle with shadows along the side. Your edges are smooth like the inside of a tooth, and when I feel you with my tongue, you become wet, rough, still dark. Perhaps somewhere in the trees that surround us in this region, what has made you who you are cries out, scratches its forearm, swings down, screws another creature, sings, shrieks, wails from its throat, then breaks for a far-off branch, a different tree. The howler monkey makes puzzles with its teeth. I was formed from a tornado that gathered up houses as a matter of course. There is no room in my wind for your puzzle. And I say this because there has never been any room in your puzzle for my wind.
Very nice. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
So right now you're going through a little bit of a transition in your life. So you're quitting your job to pursue an artistic lifestyle. So I'm curious what provoked that leap, and how. I think it's something everybody wants to do. So how did you go about doing that? And tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. I don't know where to start, but, you know, it was, I don't know, man. It's hard to pinpoint a moment, but about a year, so it's October. So in August last year, Steve, my then boyfriend, said, we took a 2-week staycation, and we worked on this book that we've been writing together, called Man vs. Self. And, we worked on it like constantly for 2 weeks, and it was awesome. It was like so fun. And then we both went back to work, and it was like exhausting. You know, at the end of that day, we came home and it was just like, oh, like it felt so sad to not be doing this creative stuff. Right. And it wasn't really a reflection on what we were doing at work. It was just like we were like doing this, and it felt so good, you know. And so at that point he said, well, maybe you should quit your job. And it was kind of a freaky notion. Like, I couldn't believe that he was suggesting that. And it didn't feel like the right time for me. So I took a year to think about it. And then eventually I gave the notice, which was very hard, actually.
Yeah, it sounds like you were doing a job you enjoyed. It wasn't like you're saying goodbye to some job that you were miserable at. You were working at Seattle Arts and Lectures. Yeah,
I got to be the director of the Writers in the Schools program, which is it's a really awesome job. I started working there 3 months into living here, so everybody I know essentially is from that job. You know, I got to meet all these writers, and because my job was to support them and see them teach and honor their artistic paths. Basically, I got to make all these great friends and people that I feel really close to and really admire. But at some point this summer, one of the writers was like about to work on, I think it was Karen Finneyfrock, whose writing I really love, and she was about to work on her third novel. And I think that was when it kind of hit me that if I didn't make a move, I was never going to finish that book. It was just going to sit on the shelf forever.
Right.
So I kind of felt like, I still feel that, like, I don't really want to leave the job. I just want more time. And there's no way to, like, magically make more time.
Right.
So that's what happened.
So is anything about this move I imagine it's filled with excitement. Is there any nervousness involved?
Yeah, man, I feel like crazy all the time.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to have any perspective when you're in the middle of something. But I feel like I just feel anxious and crazy all the time. Like there's never any moment of I should say there's this clarity inside of me where I'm like, I know I'm making the right decision for myself. I feel that, and that's like my guiding light, but everything surrounding it is like, I don't sleep. I'm like eating horribly, as you just witnessed. Like I'm not getting enough exercise. Like I'm just like not centered basically, but I have that little thing inside me that's like, this is the right thing.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Well, one of the benefits of not having a job is it does leave some time open to go for a run or go to the gym or anything like that. So next Monday would be your first day where you're not having to go to your job.
The 26th.
Okay, well, so
this coming week I'm still there, and then I'm done.
Right. So on that first Monday or whichever day it is,
yeah.
What will be the first thing you do? Will the alarm go off or what?
I was thinking about this thing where I thought I would talk to Steve ahead of time and just be like, babe, I need like a week to sleep, and then I'll get busy. But I actually made a job description for my new job. It doesn't pay, but it's
right.
a job. But it's like when we were advertising for my job, I was part of like making the job description to put out there in the world. So I had recent experience with what that should look like, and I was and it was really funny to like. It was not funny. It felt really good actually to just apply it to like, these are all the things that I want to accomplish, that Steve wants to accomplish, that we want to do together, and I'm just like laying it out so that I know what my job is. So I don't know. I don't know if it's fair for me to have a vacation day, but it has been a pretty stressful transition.
I bet. And that actually sounds like a really responsible approach to what you're doing, to actually give yourself a job description. Do you have like goals or tasks? I know, I'm sure some of the projects you're working on might be too early to really share, but what would be some of those projects that you do want to tell us about?
Well, yeah, I feel like I'm at a point where I can kind of share that like we're in the midst of a lot of things, but the book I mentioned that Steve and I were doing together was science fiction, and it's really, really fun for me because I've written a novel and completed a novel, but I am not a plot person. Like I love writing sentences and I love like the structure of a paragraph, but and I love character, but I like really, I don't know, I just couldn't figure out a plot. And Steve's a really good plot person. He's got all these ideas, and he kind of jokes like he's got his own personal writer. I'll be like, oh, I think we should do this. And I'm like, that sounds cool. So I'll write it, and then he gets to read it, and he really enjoys that. So we're working on that, and that should be done pretty soon after I leave this job because it's almost done.
But before you tell us about the next project, how does that work just creatively as two people writing a novel? You guys discuss the plot and then do you go sit down and write, or will like he write a paragraph, you write a paragraph, or is that how does that process work? Because novel you think of as like a very personal thing, so how like the collaboration?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. We started this one because I guess there's a sort of reveal in the book, so I don't want to, it's not apparent right away what it's about, so I'm not going to talk about what it's about.
Right.
But we came up with this idea. This was when I lived down the street on Summit, so it's been a little while, since this idea came up. And I don't know, one day we were just talking about the idea, and then I he went home because we didn't live together then. And I sat in my bed and like stayed up all night and wrote like the first chapter. And that's kind of the pattern that happens. So as we built, like we have the whole structure of the book and it's pretty much all written, but the end, it just gets a little confusing because there's lots of moving parts and there's lots of characters. And so we haven't quite figured out how to make all that cohesive yet. But we have, mostly we talk about ideas, we brainstorm together, we come up with an outline together, and then I flesh out the outline while Steve goes and works on songs or something. It's a pretty good system.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued by the creative relationship that you guys have because, obviously you got a romantic relationship, but then you guys you're also in a band together, the Drop Shadows. And so you write songs together. And I wonder when, in the relationship, is it always just creative talk or like, when does it switch from like, oh, we gotta go buy new blinds or go to Bed Bath & Beyond and buy towels?
Yeah.
And then when is it like, let's work on the book? Or when you're walking down the aisle, picking out new bath towels, are you also thinking like, oh, this would be a great idea for a song or something like that?
Yeah, I thought you meant the wedding aisle when you said walking down the aisle. Oh. That too. Yeah, no, I don't know. How does it work? I don't know. We kind of, when we first started dating, it just felt, we weren't making stuff together, but it was like, he was always really funny and like would tell these stories and we'd go on these really long dates. Like we go for 8 hours on a Sunday and we'd just walk around the city and have adventures. And it felt like being on a road trip. And it was just like, I get inside his mind and he's like very, like his imagination is going all over the place all the time. And so I think like that kind of energy went into our projects eventually. And as we got to know each other better, some of that is sort of focused into the projects and then that leaves room for all the practical stuff. But I don't know, I think we're both raised to be really practical. So just kind of getting stuff done isn't really that much of a stretch. But yeah, when we go, like when we came to meet you on the way, well, I was looking at poems, but we had talked about the mixed bag, like the next mixed bag, our variety show that we're going to do, and it was sort of like, okay, when we're on the train, we'll plan out the next mixed bag because we kind of already know what we want to do. But before that, I was working on poems in my room upstairs and he was like transcribing stuff from the mixed bag conversations we'd had. So I don't know how it works. We just figure it out. But I think every couple has that thing where they really shine in some way.
I think you guys are actually not like other couples. Well, actually, no, that's unfair. I've never had a relationship like you guys.
I've never had one like this before this, so I don't really know. But I felt like, I don't know, like I would date some people who were, like a long time ago, I had a boyfriend when I was like 19 who was really he was into art and he was sort of a philosopher. And so we would get into talking about ideas and it was like, that's what I would say, okay, that was really exciting, and like, it was just, I sort of followed his lead because that was his interest, but I like could get into it. But with Steve, it's like, we have a lot of similar interests. So we sort of feel like, I don't know, like everybody's got to do practical stuff, but I think we just keep it interesting by.
Well, I think one thing is you guys are always collaborating. Like there's a lot of artistic couples that support each other and they're each doing their own thing, but they don't do a lot of collaborative art, which it sounds like you guys do a lot of. And just for the people who don't know what is Mixed Bag?
Well, to back up one step, so as you mentioned, we have this band called the Drop Shadows, and it's like country root. We have a root in country, old country, like Hank Williams and Dolly Parton. I don't know. They're not of the same era exactly, but we like country music, and we make this stuff. And then we kept playing, like struggling to get shows, and we felt like what we're doing is good, and the people like we'd get good responses, but it was like we'd go to these shows and we'd see, like the last show we did was at Daryl's Tavern in Shoreline, and Phil and Melissa came out, and it was like a Wednesday night. We didn't go on until 11. Everybody has to work. Like, we have to work. You know, it just feels ridiculous to even ask people. And I think we got like $12 or something. We were there for 6 hours. The people who were there didn't even, like, the regulars didn't even pay any attention. Like, it was just kind of, I don't really have a big ego with music because I feel sort of new to it, but I'm like, so I'm willing to take what we get, but I just felt like it's kind of a waste of our time eventually. And so at that point, we had actually done a mixed bag, but we were just sort of sick of playing in these empty clubs, and so we decided to take matters into our own hands and make this show. And it kind of came from the like Cheap Wine and Poetry hosting, which I love to do. And that's like 6 times a year, maybe 7 times a year. But we kind of were like, well, what else can we create where I can be a host and I can make my jokes and like do a monologue? But like what I love about hosting is I love supporting other people. So we kind of, we always have a guest band, and the drop shadows are the house band. So we always get to play some music. And then we have our comedy sketches. So yeah, I don't know. It was like so invigorating. We did it November 22nd last year for the first time. And I just was like on such a high. I didn't even do any drugs.
Yeah, I was there. I really enjoyed it. And it's on YouTube, right? If anybody wants to check that out.
Yeah, Buddy and Buddy Productions has a YouTube channel.
Yeah, I'll make sure to put a link to that. But so when you guys are organizing something like that, because it's a variety show, where, like, I know you're involved in the art community, so you know a lot of these people, but like when you're picking, we want the house band for this, or, we're going to write a sketch, we want to contact these people to help act in it. How are you deciding, like, who to contact, or...
Well, last September we were asked to be the band. The literary series at Hugo House has three readers in a band, and so we were asked to be the band at the opening thing, and the theme was sex. And I still feel weird about it. Like, I'm still like, was that okay? I don't even know if it was okay. And like, I still don't know. I'm never gonna know. But I guess it happened, so I have to accept it. But so we, it's kind of. I still feel proud of like how hard we worked at these 3 songs, because I think we worked at them like all summer. We made these 3 new songs. We practiced constantly, and I think we did a good job. But so we had this first song was called Nuts and Bolts, which is kind of like whatever, clever, and then Breakfast, and then I don't know. That'll be on our new album. Breakfast is on our second album. But then we did Boner and Boobs, and it was like right after the intermission, and we had Matt Kelsey, our friend. It's like we have become friends because he agreed to be our boner and dress up in a big boner costume. And and we had seen him in this variety show at Hugo House that like Ed Skoog and a couple people put on, where Matt like stripped down to his underwear. So later in the night, I think he felt very invigorated by free by doing that. And so later in the night, I was like, hey, and he was like, hey, I was like, do you want to be our boner? And he's like, yes. And like not even hearing any details. So it was really exciting to like just have someone who was just like, yes, I'm totally into that. Because we had this idea that we're going to do this song, and then we wanted to have a boner and 2 boobs in costume. But, you can imagine, like, we have a lot of friends who are writers, or maybe, like, in other ways don't want to dress up in a boner or boobs costume. And so it was very exciting to, like, find Matt. And then we found Hannah and Christy, who were willing to be boobs. So that's sort of, we did that, and a lot of people... who didn't come, a lot of our friends who didn't come heard about it, and so we decided to do an encore performance, and that was how we built our cast for the mixed bag.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and so the one thing I think you didn't mention though, but for the Lit series, one of the things when you guys were asked to be a part of it, there was a theme, and then it was like new works, because I think you're expected to write new.
Yeah.
So you wrote those new songs, and the theme was it just sex, or was it like...
It was called Backseats and Bedrooms.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when we were asked to do it, Peter Mountford had sent And he was, like, really trying to convince... We were supposed to go in May, and I think, like, the September band dropped out, and he was like, please do September. And he was like, the theme is sex! Sex! And he was, like, trying to make it sound really exciting. So we're like... And then when he introduced us, he's like, these guys are a couple, so, you know, they have... So it was funny. So I think it was good, but I really will never know. I don't know. I liked it, but I don't know. It's kind of awkward to, like... Because it's a Hugo house. It's this place I totally respect. And, you know, it's like Mona Simpson's there. And I'm like, is it okay to have, like, a boner costume? But Matthew Dickman was singing along, so it's kind of cool.
I was sitting in the crowd, and at least in the people surrounding me, they all seemed to really enjoy it.
That's good.
So, is there, you know, some mixed bag on is there a possibility it'll end up on YouTube again?
Yeah, well, and it's actually at buddyandbuddy.com, and so you can link to, it is on YouTube, but, like, you can, that's easier for anyone listening if they want to look it up, because, yeah, searching on YouTube there's a lot of buddies on YouTube, I guess. But, yeah, I mean, we're going to do one after Thanksgiving. I think November 28th is our target date. We have the scripts ready, but we haven't talked to any of the actors, so I'm not sure if that's going to work, but yeah, we have a plan to serialize it and make 1-minute segments that people can digest on their lunch break. 6-second segments, maybe. We'll see.
So with all this collaboration with your husband, poetry seems like something that is actually a little more personal, that you do more on your own. Yeah. And I've seen you read and always enjoy it. And I know right now you're part of the Jack Straw program. Mm-hmm. So when, with the band, the show, and everything, when do you find time to put down some poems?
Well, Steve is not a morning person, so that's really helpful. I don't know if you've ever seen Lady Hawk. If you ever want to understand our relationship, watch Lady Hawk.
Is that a movie?
It's really funny, yeah. Michelle Pfeiffer's in it and some other dude. And it was just like, you know, Steve, so this will be funny to you. But it was like, he's very... he's a kind of understated guy, right? And it's part of, like, his charm and his humor. But, like, we were living together at the time. So we'd been together for, like, 1.5 years. And he had this movie, and he puts it in the VCR, because at that time we had a whole room devoted to our VCR. Yeah. And he was like, this reminds me of our relationship. Like, partway through, he's like, this reminds me of our relationship. And it always has. I was like, I've never even heard of this movie until right now. But so what happens in the movie is that there's a curse. It's sort of a fantasy thing. And so there's a curse placed on this couple that love each other so much. And this witch is jealous, you know, whatever. You know how witches are. Yeah. And so she makes this curse where they only can be human together for a split second. And then at nighttime, Michelle Pfeiffer turns into a hawk, a lady hawk. And then
this sounds amazing.
Dawn, yeah, it's so good, Steve. You got to come over and watch it on our VCR. And then, like, at dawn, they switch, and then he becomes a bear. I think he's a bear. And anyway, and so it was like, I think Steve told me right before he put it in, and then halfway through, I was like, oh, because I was like, do you think I look like her? Like, what is it? And then I realized that it's because, and this literally does happen to us, like, he'll stay up super late, and he's usually recording or, you know, in the fun house, in the back house, like, playing the guitar, and then he comes in, and he, like, has trouble falling asleep, so instead of coming up to bed, I've gone to sleep at, like, 9, he'll watch TV, and then he falls asleep on the couch, and then at, like, 5:30, I wake up, and I come downstairs to use the bathroom, and he's like, oh, buddy, and then he goes upstairs to bed, and I'm up, you know, so basically, that's when I write my poems. Like, I'll wake up, and he's not anywhere to be found, and I just, you know, I mean, he's in the bed. I know where he is, but right. I'm not, like, we're not interacting, and he has no interest in interacting or being creative together. So that's my poem time.
Yeah, and so how's that going? Are you putting together some sort of collection? Is that the word on the street?
Yeah, that's the word on the street. Everybody's talking about it. I don't know. Do you ever feel this with poems or, like, with writing in general, where you kind of start a new thing and you're like, this is it. This is how I write. And so I did that, like, for about 6 months, sort of at the end of last year and, like, the beginning of the Jack Straw Fellowship. and I was writing all these poems about my parents' divorce, basically. And I think, like, I like them. I think they're good poems, and I think I was writing about it well for the first time in 25 years. You know, it's like I was ready to write about it. And I like those poems. But I kind of felt like this whole manuscript will be built around this event and these poems. And then some time passed, and now I look at the older poems, and I'm seeing all the value in those too. So I think I get really into a project. I'm really into it. I'm like, these are the ones. And so I think ultimately the manuscript will be a mix of stuff I've written over the past, 15 years. So I don't know. When I got my PhD, I, had to write a manuscript, and I sent it out, and it was, it did okay in contests. I mean, I was finalist a few times, and I felt like this is going to happen, and it still hasn't. So it's been, 7 years. So I don't know. I have a book that's ready to go. I'm trying to send it places.
Would you like to share a poem with us?
Yeah, all right. I'll read this one. This one is called Recovery and Surrender. And God was in the morning, God was. Speak to me with your mouth closed. The hands are speaking something, doing fire in lines. The next thing was the refinement of the other. A man tied mouth and tongue to a mute metal chair. The kitchen around the corner, yellow formica. Stepping inside there, I could see my own painted toes. Dirt lived on the floor there. It mingled and multiplied. Rode dangerous rides. Through the kitchen window, there's God as a lion next to the mountaintop. All the while, man tied hums and gasps and chokes and mules. I wish I could say I didn't love him, but I love every man as a brother, every woman as a sister. The television cracked. I knew what was on it, something old, something sweet, something I Love Lucy. So will you untie me, the man asked, speaking with his mouth closed. Out there in here, God exists in fire and lines. I had not made those knots. The man had done them himself, living out his long childhood as an adult. God was in the house then. God was, surrounding the chair, leaves flourishing from a sickly tree. I stepped into the kitchen, yellow formica, table, dust floor, where I could hear but not see. The muteness rose into song and songbirds then. Wings tapped gently against the window as they lifted off, upward into fire and line.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, in the past 7 years of working on these poems, you said it started with the manuscript for your PhD. Is that correct? Or did I make that up?
What started?
Some of these poems.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe was that one of them, or maybe not?
This one was more recent, but yeah. I mean, a lot of them were... Yeah, I don't know. I've always been writing forever, so, since I was, 7. I'm not including any of my 7-year-old poems in the manuscript. I don't think they're ready.
They should need a couple more revisions.
Yeah. But,
well, so you're very educated. You're a doctor. So why so much education to not be teaching a college class right now?
Because I don't really know. I mean, it's not easy to find a good college teaching job. That's the main reason.
Right.
It was funny when I graduated. I mean, before I graduated, there were all these. So we did mock interviews, which were really, really, really helpful. Like people that professors that we knew would act like they didn't know us, and we'd have to go in and they would grill us. It was really hard, but it was very, very, very helpful. And we had a lot of professional development on how to apply, and I applied to lots of places, and I thought it was I remember, I haven't really thought about it that much, except that I'm leaving my job, and I kind of remember feeling desperate, but when you get a PhD because you expect to be teaching college, and that's what you're working towards, and I remember, like, that last year, it was a 5-year program, and in the year 5, I was teaching for writers in the schools there full-time. So I taught, like, all day, Monday through Thursday, and I had Friday off, and I was teaching poetry, so I was constantly inspired, and it was, like, always on my mind, and so it was a really productive writing year. And, that was the year I was, like, constantly sending out my poems, and I got a few publications, and that was when my manuscript was, like, a finalist for, it was, like, 7 different prizes, and then since then, like, nothing, you know, but it was, like, that year I was trying all the time, but I really thought, if I don't get a book, I will never work, and it was it's such a terrible position. A lot of people are in that position, and, I didn't know what else I was going to do. It's like you graduate from these jobs and you're qualified to do basically one thing. So it was like it was like a blessing or something. Like, it was just like I got a job I got a job because I knew how to teach and I knew how to write, but I didn't know how to, like, do the work that I do now, but I learned. But I was, like, really fortunate that I had people who believed I could do it.
So does that mean... even if you have a PhD in poetry, if you don't have a poetry book, it makes it a lot harder to actually get hired? Do you basically need both?
Does a PhD help get it? Is that what you're saying?
Like, well, no, I'm saying like you've got the poetry PhD, but you don't have an actual book of your poems published by a reputable publisher. Mm-hmm. Does that make it so can't get a job? Or
you mean can't get a job in a college setting?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think it's not. I mean, I remember. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've known people who have definitely gotten jobs without having books, but the jobs, like, essentially what you want ideally is you want a tenure track job, but you come in as an assistant professor, but it's tenure track and you can stay forever, and it's great.
Right.
I've had friends who've gotten those jobs and they've been hazed and they've had to leave because it's been horrible. That's definitely part of it. I've gotten, had lots of friends who have jobs that are, and my first job out of my PhD was at the university I graduated from, University of Houston, and it was a 2-year thing, and there was no possibility for renewal, and it was great. It was a great experience, but after that, it's like, what do you do? Like, my colleague there who had 2 books published, ended up teaching high school. And, it's not easy to get a job. There aren't that many.
So was it Houston? Was that the last place you lived before you moved to Seattle?
It was.
What was the reason to come to Seattle?
I was...
Because you had never lived here beforehand. Is that right?
Right, yeah. I had met someone at a summer camp, and we dated, like, long distance for my last year in Houston. We met in the summer.
Went to summer camp when you were getting your PhD?
I taught at a summer camp. I did go to summer camp.
Okay.
And we met, and he lived here, and then I decided I would move here. And as... not a very successful relationship, but I got my job and my brother was here, so went through lots of dark, depressing years, but I made it through. Yeah.
Well, and now you're teaching 11-year-olds, and how does that compare, or what's the satisfaction compared to teaching, maybe college poetry class? Is that how different is that?
It's really great. I mean, I don't know. About a month ago, I was offered an interview at Green River Community College, and I was very excited about that, but I realized the semester started September 21st, and I was still going to be full-time at my job, and I knew it was like either I could teach for writers in the schools or I could do this because it's every day, So it's like there's really no way I'm going to be able to do both. And it's something I, hope to do in the future at some point again. But because I love teaching college, I love teaching composition is really exciting. It's really exciting to get a bunch of 18-year-olds or however old they are, but like incoming freshmen who are like, I have no idea how to write. I suck at this. and then to show them that they do know how to do it, it's very satisfying. And the thing with kids is that they don't know that they love poetry, and then, it's at the end, they've all written successful poems, and they're like, oh, I actually do like this.
Yeah.
But it's so fun. I mean, it's so fun. And in college, I taught a poetry class, but I taught one. I taught mostly composition for 5 years. And I taught some literature classes. But the poetry class I taught, it was not my favorite, actually.
Yeah. Was it was it a type of class where you were, like, discussing poems, or where they were, like, actually writing poems?
Yeah, it was a workshop. They were writing poems. Every time I would bring stuff in, and they would read stuff. We'd talk about it. So we had both elements, but there were some, it was just my only one. I'm sure if I did it again and again, it would get better and better. Right. And it wasn't a bad class, but there was something I loved about I always liked the underdog, I think. It's sort of in my nature, and I loved, like, working with kids who really didn't think they could write. That's really a pleasure. And you find that in writers in the schools all the time, because these kids are 10 and 11 and they don't know they can write, but I know they can.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it, because, like, I know it and I'm going to help them understand it. And in the poetry class in college, it was like kids who really, it was just a different attitude. They came in, a lot of the kids were like, oh, I know I could, I'm great, I'm awesome. And it was just a different energy to work with. And I don't know if I knew how to show them to write poetry at that time either.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think it was a good class, but it was interesting that I love teaching for writers in the schools, and I love teaching college comp, and
so
maybe one day the two shall meet.
For your personal experience growing up, what age-ish was it when you thought, maybe not thought, oh, I can write, but when, you're teaching these 11, 10-year-olds who either don't think they can write or probably thought they didn't like poetry. But what age were you at when you were like, oh, I like writing this, or I think I can do this?
I think I was writing for a while, and I really, really loved writing stories, and I would write, like, dabble in poetry, but I think I really got it when I was, like, in 9th grade, 14. I think I really owned it when I was in 10th grade, actually, because in 9th grade, my now friend Lloyd Schaefer, who's my writing, you may have met him at my wedding, but he was my 9th grade teacher, and he would insist that I bring him my work, because he saw something in me that I didn't really know was there, because I liked doing it, but I never had a teacher. I never showed my writing to my parents. Like, no adult had ever told me it was good.
Right. Nobody showed interest.
Yeah. And so that's one reason why I love writers in the schools, because it's like, if you have an adult who's like, yeah, you got it. And I was just reading my kid's work this morning, and it's like, this kid, he's like, his handwriting is, obviously has like some writing issues, his spelling was all off, but there was some image in there that I can't remember it right now, and I wish I could, but it was just so awesome.
Yeah.
And I was like, every single word was misspelled, and I know, like, he's obviously probably been told his whole life, like, you have a problem with writing, and it was just so great to see that image and be like, you are awesome, like, this image is so cool, and just to know, like, that's going to give him a little bit of confidence.
Yeah.
And I mean it. It's genuine. It's like, that's a really super cool image. So anyway, when Lloyd Schaefer was making me come to his classroom in the mornings and show me his work, I started to believe that I could do it. And then, like, that year I won a writing award, and it wasn't just our school. It was like the whole area. It was a regional scholastic award, and he announced it in class. And that was when I was like, oh, I think maybe I can do this. And then the next year, all I did was write. And
was the award for a poem?
It was for a short story.
Well, can you tell us what it was about? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. It was really cool. I should send it to you.
Yeah.
I still have it. It was about a guy named Jimmy.
So I'm already in.
The whole premise is I have not read it in a really long time, but I'm kind of curious what it was like. But he was an adult and saw his old house where he'd grown up, and he went in and he turned into a kid again. That was the premise. I don't remember what happens, but the judges liked it, I guess.
That's deep for a 10th grader.
Yeah, 9th grade when
or
I did
9th grader.
Yeah.
And then so your undergrad...
Through the Eyes of a Child, that's what it was called.
Brilliant. You should read that at the next Cheap Wine and Poetry.
I should read it tomorrow at the Rainier Valley Lit Crawl.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, this will not be... Anybody listening to this, it probably would have happened in the past, but...
Yeah.
Rainier Valley Lit Crawl.
Yeah.
But speaking of lit crawls, you're going to be involved in the Seattle Lit Crawl.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're hosting Cheap Beer and Prose, Cheap Wine and Poetry. Mm-hmm. But you're also reading at one event too, is that right?
Am I? Oh. No one told me. No, I don't think I am.
Oh, no, you're not? Oh, scratch that.
I want to next year.
Oh.
But I don't think I'm reading in anything because no one's contacted me about it.
Oh. I assumed.
It's okay. I'm happy to be hosting because I love that too.
Well, so speaking of Cheap Wine and Poetry, how did you get involved with that?
Listeners, there's some job descriptions that come up in your Facebook feed when you just know you're the right person. And we all know this experience of you want a job and you like craft your cover letter to make it appear that you're the right person, but you don't totally want that job and you're not totally the right person. And, they probably know it. I've been a hiring manager, so I can tell when that's happening. But, sometimes, you just have to pull one off. But this was a job description that came through, and it was I forget what you guys wrote, but it was are you a sassy, literary-minded woman? And I was reading it, and I was like, yes. And it's do you have glitter or something yes? Do you have sassy pants? I don't know what it was. It was yes. And it was do you blah, blah, blah. And I was yes. And I got so excited. I was at my brother's apartment. I remember I was probably a little drunk and I read it. I was oh my God, this is a job for me. And so I wrote this email cover letter. And it's one of those ones where I want to share it with the world for how to be successful in a job application, because it felt I was just I felt like I was definitely the right person for the job, and I didn't have to lie, I didn't have to make anything up because everything felt like such a good fit for real. So that was really cool. And then I got an interview 8 months later, however long it took. Felt like it took forever because I was really checking. But it was great, and I was at the Redwood, and I got to meet you for the first time. It was just very exciting, and Brian, who I'd already known. And then we just drank some beers and made jokes. And that was it.
Yeah.
It was very exciting. It's the most exciting thing I do. I love it so much. It's changed my life.
So so you were basically taking over a position that somebody else had already been doing and had their own style. Mm-hmm. So when you knew you were taking this over, how did you decide what your approach was going to be, and how can I make this my own as opposed to doing impersonation of the previous person, because what you're doing now is great, and it's very different from what the person was doing before. So where did that come from? How did this all evolve?
Yeah, that's a good question. I remember, so I had read at Cheap Wine at one point, and I remember Charlotte being really welcoming, and I was very nervous because it's a huge crowd, and it does feel like Brian said before, when people are asked, they feel like they've made it, and I felt that way, and I was very, 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 very much really wanted to bring it and have a great performance. And I was super nervous, and Charlotte was so calm and warm and welcoming. And so that part, like, I really wanted to make sure to be that person for readers, because I remember well, like, how nervous people can be, and I've seen it. Like, I see it every time. People are like, they're all nervous, and I'm like, you're going to be great. I know you're going to be great. I'm so excited you're here. And it just is like that. It was something that I made sure to, like, I just remember her doing that. And then I remember one where it was like April, I think it was April Poetry Month, and I think Charlotte was doing like a Pablo Neruda thing in between. And anyway, I didn't want to do, I was sort of like, I went to a lot of them, and I don't remember all the shtick she did, but I knew that my job was sort of to take up some space in between so that people could get up and get drinks, and there would be like a little relaxed atmosphere. But I obviously didn't want to do like the exact same thing she had done, because I know like you can never do the same thing, like you're a different person.
Right.
But I had been doing the Writers in the Schools works in progress readings at that point for like 3 or 4 years, and there was always some sort of creative introduction. And I think at that point I was doing, like, Wits had its 16th year, and I had asked all the writers to give me, like, what were you guys doing? What were you like when you were 16? And they're writers, and they're really cool and funny and have great stories. So they all sent me these really interesting details. Yeah. So that, that it occurred to me that, like, that would be a good approach for introducing all these people, because everyone loves to, and it's like, there's only been one person in the 3 years I've been doing it who's, like, really not wanted to share very much. But everybody else is like, here's 17 interesting facts about myself. And it's really, really, really fun for me to work with that. And I think the first time I was trying to do something that wasn't quite as successful, it was fine. It was my first time. I was just trying stuff out. But it's like after that, I kind of was like, well, I want to just talk about them.
Right.
Because the whole thing is, like, I'm honoring them. Like, it's their night, and it's fun to, like, be up there and, like, make jokes and help people have fun and feel comfortable, but just, like, mostly make it about the writers.
Yeah, and I clearly I'm biased, but, like, I love the way you introduce them, because it's, every reading you're going to hear their typical bio that is plastered all over the internet and everybody says, but it's great to hear these things beforehand, like, this person's left-handed, or, it's always something really quirky and interesting that is always great to hear, especially when this person is about to, possibly share something, really personal. Mm-hmm. So you already feel like you know them beforehand, because you've managed to pry this, or no, pry might be the wrong word, but you've managed to get this information out of them, and it's always pretty funny.
Thanks. Well, it's really fun. Like, it's like usually when I talk to you, like, because I think lately I've been more like, well, we only had one recently, but I feel more confident because I have been doing it longer. But, like, I would always call, like, my brother and sometimes Ben Stevens, and I'd always, like, call you. And then I finally showed up, but it was sort of like, all right, I've got these jokes, and it's, like, really helpful to talk about it. And there was that one when, like, Jarrett Middleton was reading, and it was, like, Canadian or American, and I was just like, I don't know my approach here. And you came over in the intermission, and you're like, I don't remember what you said, but you're like, well, is it Canadian or American or whatever? And then I was like, that's it. And it's so fun to, like, have those collaborations and kind of, like, find the way in. Because I usually find that I always come up with, like, a kind of monologue opening thing, but then after that, and then I know what I'm going to say for each reader, but it kind of, like, let the jokes be inspired by what the previous reader has said, or like something that's come up. And so it's really fun at the end of it to feel like there's this thread that I could never have predicted, and I certainly didn't plan. Yeah. I mean, I plan other stuff, but different things happen, and it's really, really fun. Yeah,
you're always very quick-witted when I can almost always tell when it's off script. Or script is even too formal of a word, but when it's off script and lands pretty well. So we're moving along real quick, but let's talk about Drop Shadows real quick.
Yeah,
I know you guys have been putting some work into the studio. And how's the the new album coming along?
It's good. I mean, like, so we have, about our EP that we're going to put out. I think we're going to do the album first, and then we're going to do the EP, but we're still unsure of the order. But the EP is this Outlaws thing, and we got married so that we could go on a honeymoon where we could write a story about these outlaws who sort of modeled themselves after Bonnie and Clyde, and it was really, really, really cool because we went to Seminole, Oklahoma, where my mom was born and raised, and we found this really old cafe bus. It's like where the buses pulled in. It's called the Union Bus Stop Cafe. So we figured out that Maggie Sue, our character, worked there. And basically, it's like we've already written these songs, but we want to write an accompanying novella, and we're going to have, I do comics too, so we're going to have like comics in there. Anyway, so we're planning this whole thing that we're very excited about, and that's going to be 4 songs. So we're working on that. We have those songs written, but we kind of figured we should have the whole story written first so we know where to insert the songs into the book. And the second album's great. I don't know, like sometimes I go to sleep and like 5 hours later Steve's like, I recorded 2 songs. And then, he does all the parts. I do my vocals and the trumpet, and if I'm playing guitar on the song, but he does the bass and his guitar part and the drums and the tambourine. And
so for the EP, I actually don't think I realized how multimedia it is. So it's so it's a novella with a comic in it, or will that be like will be a novella with you turn a page and then there's some images, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. Did you read The Wizard of Oz? Like the 1900 version. Mm-hmm. So it's like every chapter starts with a picture of some sort. So I think it might be that simple, where it's not actually a comic strip, but we're gonna have some comic element to it. But I don't know. We were just talking about this over dinner. It's like we're doing this stuff because we have lots of interest in different genres of art. But there's also this, I feel like for Steve and I, we're genuinely interested in doing these things, and that's really cool. And there's also this, like, how do you market something or make something that feels different? Because we think the songs that we're doing are already good, but we're not getting a lot of, we don't get a lot of attention from it. So we're going to try this other approach. And, but essentially we're going to have this short story. And I'll be like, here's a part of the story. Now go here. There's going to be a puzzle aspect, and you got to figure out the puzzle. And if you figure out the puzzle, you'll get the URL to go get the song that you can download for free.
Oh, nice. That sounds awesome. Yeah.
So that's why we have to wait for the story, because the songs are written. They're not recorded, but they're written, and then we have to write the story. But it was really fun, too. I've written half of it, and it's really fun. Yeah,
it sounds like it. I've heard you guys kind of mention it here and there, but I hadn't really got the full story yet.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
So before we end, I'm going to have to ask you, what is your version of success?
Well, I've been thinking about this one for a while. I don't know. I think you grow up and I don't know. I had my 20th high school reunion recently, and when I went there, I realized that everybody was who they were in high school. And I think for a long time, let's say for 19 3/4 of a year, I thought we had no idea who we were in high school. We were just trying to be these people we are now. Right. And then I realized that actually we knew who we were. Because in high school, and when you're a teenager, you're just asserting who you are constantly. And you don't care what other people think at all. And then you become an adult and you start caring more and more. And you curb your enthusiasm and all this stuff. And I think for years, I definitely did that because I wanted to be liked and I wanted to be a good person, and it's all this good. It's like there's nothing wrong with this way, but as soon as I knew I was leaving my job, I felt more and more comfortable to be my own person and be the artist that I am. And so I think my version of success is being the person I was in high school in a way that's you know, not immature, not like an 18-year-old, but just someone who knows who she is and knows what she wants to do and is like, that's cool. Like in high school, I was like, I'm writing. I'm wearing my brother's hand-me-downs. I'm not brushing my hair. I'm never going to wear makeup. Who do you think you are? Like, I'm doing this. And that was cool.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of friends, and it wasn't like I didn't have to try to fit in. And I feel like for years after that, I just tried to fit in. And it was a fun thing to try on for a while, but I just want to go back to being myself.
That is an excellent place to end on. Do you want to read one more poem, or? Yeah,
I could read this Working in an Office poem.
That sounds brilliant, especially since you're leaving the office life.
Yeah, and I felt like kind of nervous about making this. Like, I've read this at an open mic before at the Breadline, but But then I realized at a certain point that I love my job really, and I love my coworkers, and it's cool and it's good. But everybody feels this way sometimes, I think. And I'm reading this for you, Steve Barker. Working in an office. First of all, it's being forced to sit in a seat with a sock stuffed in my mouth, tied right in there with a telephone cord. And second of all, it's like if I talk, I have to struggle first and spit. And if I succeed in removing the sock without the use of my hands, I will not get the impressed looks of women who envy the power of another woman, but rather will be questioned with, "Who are you? We thought you were no longer here." Working in an office is breaking pencils at my desk because it's the only way to make noise. But pencils are useless now because pencil sharpeners are obscure, so it's almost like breaking a stale cracker to share when everyone eats roast beef dinners each night. And they're so full from their own riches that the meager offering I hold means less to them than the sentence they've just deleted from an email. Working in an office is finding a way to make poems from a stapler and a paperclip. It's hanging my coat on a rack too high for me to reach. It is sitting on the edge of my chair just in case falling is a better option than staying upright. It's like living inside a television set on mute. I am the character in the sitcom whose luck never improves and is not good or bad enough to warrant any interested attention from the audience. It is moving around on that sitcom stage, trying to find a comfortable place to sit, even though all of the chairs are made out of cardboard and stuffed with words, which, it turns out, are hard when they turn and sharp around the edges.
I can relate to that. That was really good. Thank you very much. And then, so the next Cheap Wine and Poetry would be November 5th? Or is that a Cheap Beer and Prose?
That is a Cheap Wine and Poetry. Kevin Kraft is reading, and Jane Wong, and Nikita Oliver, and someone else great.
Yeah, it'll be a good night as always, and Jeanine will tell some funny jokes and give you some interesting facts about the readers that aren't in our regular bio. Thanks a lot, Jeanine. This was fun.
Thanks, Steve.
I'll be the devil, you be the angel. I'll be the devil today, then tomorrow you could be the devil, I'll be the angel. That's just the way we play. Something in the way you look at me, something in the things you took from me. I'll be the devil, you'll be the angel. I'll be the devil today, then tomorrow you could be the devil, I'll be the angel. That's just the way we play. Tomorrow you can be the devil, I'll be the angel. That's just the way we play. Something in the way
something ain't the way it ought to be. I'll be the devil, you'll be the angel. I'll be the devil today.
Then tomorrow
you can be the devil, I'll be the angel. That's just the way we play.
you'll be the angel. I'll be the devil today. Then tomorrow you can be the devil. I'll be the angel. That's just the way we play. This is a match made in heaven and hell. I guess that's why we fit so well. I said